So tonight we're going to read from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, and this is the parable of the final judgment. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand, and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Then he will say to those at his left hand, "You are the accursed. Depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Naked and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will also answer, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, a stranger or naked or sick or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. The very first thing that comes to light after reading this parable is, wow, that's hard. Those are hard words. It's almost as if it's a threat, isn't it? That we must be careful how we live. We must be careful in the ways in which we engage with others, specifically the least of these, as Jesus calls them. We must be careful about the way we engage them. Now, at the surface level, we might say, because it might be Jesus, right? We don't know if it's Jesus or not. But really, is that what the parable is trying to say? Or is it that whenever we do these good works towards the least of these, that we are in some way doing them for, in the name of, to Jesus? And so it's not that sometimes they will be the least of these and sometimes they will be Jesus for us, but that every single person we encounter in that situation is Jesus revealed for us. John Claypool in his book talks about how we shouldn't really read this as a threat, but more as a promise. Sort of like what Dr. Morgan says, if you look at the answers in the end of the book and see that you made sure that your answer was correct before you handed in the paperwork, the test, that is sort of what Jesus is trying to do, to say, here is where we're going, here is how to get there, this is the promise that I have for you, that if you follow me, if you serve, if you do these things, then you will find me for sure, that you will live eternally with me. There is threat, and then there is also promise. You know, there's a book by a famous preacher, pastor, called Jesus Wants to Save Christians. And I wonder if that title at least, maybe not the book, but the title at least might be fitting for this parable. That in the midst of our lives as disciples, here is this parable saying, I want to help you to follow me. I want to help you by putting forward a warning, a helpful directive hint, a roadmap, if you will, as to how to continue to follow me. Because we have to be careful that we don't see this as an insurance policy. In that, if we do these good works, then therefore we we avoid what punishment might come. Is this an insurance policy, or is this a helpful way to remind us how we are to follow Jesus with the totality of our lives? One way to think about it, that Dr. Morgan, our senior pastor, likes to say is the difference between a get to and a got to, right? If it's an insurance policy, if it's just a way for us to avoid this very hard language, specifically at the end of the parable, then it's a got to, right? But if it's a way in which we participate in our discipleship, if it's a way in which we participate in serving Jesus, then it's a get to. It's an additive. It's something wonderful that we can do that helps us grow closer to others and to Jesus. Remember the two greatest commandments. And I think Chris's artwork helps us to see this in that the focal point isn't on the least of these, is it? It's on Jesus at the very center. And here at the bottom, surrounding the world, are the ways in which we participate in our discipleship with all people. Dr. Morgan also says this in his study guide. The point of following Jesus is following Jesus. The point of following Jesus is following Jesus. It's a get to. It's a daily opportunity to be involved with the one who knows our very hearts, who knows our very names, who understands us because he was incarnate. He was God in flesh for us. And it's our participation in his way of life that helps to further our relationship with him and others. Following Jesus as the central point of this. Do you ever notice why it brings up sheep and goats? Who is the person who takes care of both sheep and goats? Shepherd. The shepherd. If Jesus is the good shepherd, then to serve him is to also serve his beloved sheep.